Joining us to discuss more is Iraq war veteran and Turning Point USA contributor Rob Smith. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This was really the first debate so far where foreign policy was a major issue discussed following the recent events unfolding in the Middle East. More moderate candidates such as South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg and former Vice President Joe Biden differed from the viewpoints of progressive candidates such as Senators Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders. As someone who served in Iraq, what is your reaction to all this?
My first reaction is that there was way too much Monday morning quarterbacking about the initial vote to go to Iraq in the first place. You have to understand that the invasion of Iraq is going into its 17-year anniversary, right? So this happened in 2003. It's 2020 now, so we're going on 17 years of this war. So there was way too much arguing about whose vote was what. You had a lot of Joe Biden trying to misrepresent what his vote was to authorize the Iraq war. So you have him trying to misrepresent that. Bernie Sanders trying to cloak himself into, the progressive bona fides by saying that I was against this war from the very beginning. To me, it didn't really matter because there was a lot of people on that stage that didn't seem to not have a fundamental understanding of what we're supposed to do now. Nobody cares about what your vote was 17 years ago. We have troops over there now. We have a situation in Iraq now. So how are you going to handle it? And the thing for me was that I didn't really see anybody on that stage with a really clear and concise message about how to deal with Iraq moving forward. And also you had a lot of people pretending as if having peacekeeping troops and having ground troops engaged in combat are the same thing. They're two completely different things. And I think that there was a fundamental lack of understanding of that from even Buttigieg, who's an Afghanistan war veteran as well. So I think that there was just a lot of misunderstanding about Iraq in general. I felt watching that debate that there were not strong leaders on Iraq and Middle East policy on that stage. I didn't think that there was anybody that was going to be able to stand up to the powers that be in those places like Donald Trump would.
And to your point, as you said, a lot of the discussion was focused on that vote about 17 years ago rather than the discussion going forward. Now, Senator Elizabeth Warren said there was, quote, danger in picking a candidate that could not pull the party together or picking someone who takes for granted big parts of the Democratic constituency. What does this say about the unity among the Democrat Party ahead of the Iowa caucus?
Well, I think that when they talk about picking a candidate that takes large parts of the Democratic constituency for granted, what they really mean is taking black voters for granted, because black voters are the backbone of the Democratic Party, and they've been taking black voters for granted for decades at this point. What it says for unity in the party, I don't know if the unity in the Democratic Party is a really big question right now, because they're going into Iowa, they're going into the caucuses. I think that these fissures in terms of not being unified are going to start showing when you get into Super Tuesday and when you actually, lead up to the convention. I think we're going to see more of those fissures when it comes to unity. You see the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren camps fighting. You see the very far progressive left that is always complaining about diversity and inclusion and all these different things that are not pleased to see a bunch of older white candidates on the stage. So I think that those fissures that we're going to see in the Democratic Party among the base and also among all of their frontrunners for president, these are fissures that we're going to see in the months coming ahead.
And also, Deval Patrick, who is also running for the presidency, he even slammed the DNC, saying that there were no candidates that had there was a lack of diversity regarding the candidates who took the debate stage. Many analysts took into account that there was not as much diversity reflected in this last debate, as there were no non-white candidates represented on the stage. And as you pointed out, how does this affect the minority population heading into the caucuses and primaries? Because we know that the minority vote, the Democratic Party, they're really big on the minority vote, but how will this affect them?
Yeah, well, it's really funny when people talk about the Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of diversity and inclusion, and they got these like 5 white people on stage. When we're at the same part that we're in right now during the Republican debates back in 2016. We had Ben Carson, we had Ted Cruz. There was a lot more diversity reflected on the Republican side then than there is on the Democratic side now, which says something. I think that going into Iowa caucuses, you have to realize that Iowa is a very white state with a lot of very white voters, and the people that they are excited about in Iowa are reflecting the electorate. Look at how well Bernie Sanders is doing. Look at how well Pete Buttigieg is doing. Look at how well Elizabeth Warren is doing. So I don't think that the diversity question is going to be a question for the Iowa caucus goers to answer, as well as the voters in New Hampshire. I think that the diversity inclusion question is going to come in the further months, because when you look at the Super Tuesday states and what's going on, and I've always believed that Joe Biden's going to be the nominee on the left for the president, because older African American voters in those southern Super Tuesday states are who I think are going to carry Joe Biden to the nomination. They have no idea who Pete Buttigieg is. They're not, Elizabeth Warren does not appeal to them, nor does Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has never really appealed to African American voters. So I think that Biden's going to be the one. But in terms of the diversity question right now going into Iowa, I don't think it's a very big deal. Iowa's a very white state, a lot of white voters. I don't know if diversity is on top of mind there. And when we talk about this diversity conversation, nobody talks about diversity of thought, which is something that is very much missing on the left. There's a lack of diversity of thought on the left, and I think we should start talking about that as well. But when it comes to skin color and ethnic diversity, it's not something the Iowa caucus goers are going to be thinking about in the coming weeks.
Some interesting points there, diversity of thought. If Joe Biden wins the nomination, it'll be interesting to see how he goes head-to-head with President Trump, since the black unemployment is at record lows, and what he's done with criminal justice reform. So we'll have to wait and see if your prediction holds true. Rob Smith, thank you so much for coming on once again.
Thank you so much, and I don't think Sleepy Joe stands a chance.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.